So let's begin then with that same slide we had last week showing the 5 or 6, depending on who you count, Hawaiian Islands. We started with Hawaii and Maui, and we're working our way up to Oahu and Kauai. And if you weren't here last week, you might not know that these islands are slowly drifting to the northwest toward Japan, and new ones are being added this way. So we started with the newest islands, and we're going to ones now that have extinct volcanoes on, but they're all extinct. They're all volcanic. So this is a map of Oahu. And of course, we're going to be looking at the Honolulu area, which is where the big red circle is. And you see Pearl Harbor right here, the airport. So you see Pearl Harbor as you fly into it. And Honolulu along this shore, Diamond Head being out on this an extinct volcano, and the road system through, which we'll be looking at further. So flying into Honolulu looks something like this. It creeps up the hill. And the Waikiki area is the downtown, not the business district, but the hotel district. So we have about 4 blocks wide and 10 blocks long. And in that area, at least when I was there, there were about 400 hotels. I'm not sure that there are more than that now or not. Some of the older ones are probably being replaced. A bunch of malls, beach all along there. And the beaches, you can walk all along the beach. You're not restricted to which hotel is at the beach. This is true in all the islands. So this is Waikiki Beach, the very famous one. This pink hotel was one of the early hotels, the Royal Hawaiian. It really stands out, but there are new ones going up all the time, these smaller ones coming down and the bigger ones coming up. This little area right here is called Baby Beach, and there are some of the other beaches have them too, where there's a breakwater to make the waves less high for the little children. So this is where you can bring your toddlers without worrying about having a wave knock them over. And at the north end, or actually it's the east end, I guess, of the Waikiki, there's this statue, the surfer with the seal. And along the beach, one of Duke, Hanahoko, he was one of 5 brothers, one of whom we'll meet a little bit later. And Duke was a very famous Hawaiian. I've reprinted what the little plaque was because it was almost unreadable so that you could see who he was. He was a full-blooded Hawaiian who was an Olympic champion and a really fast swimmer. He won gold medals, silver medals. He's a surfer. He was known as the father of international surfing and introduced surfing in a lot of places in the world. He saved people from a capsized boat. He was sheriff of Honolulu. He was a movie actor. He was kind of a little bit of everything. Everybody knew who Duke was. And he was considered the ambassador of aloha, meaning the welcoming spirit of Hawaii in 1912. So this statue is of him on the beach. And as you walk down the beach, you may have slept late. If you got in an overnight flight, you can have breakfast or brunch by the ocean and have these kinds of views out onto the beach anywhere along there. Lots of restaurants. Here is the statue we were just looking at along the beach. So I wanted to take 2 pictures of, I wanted to show you 2 pictures of Diamond Head. I did not personally go to Diamond Head. I saw it pretty much this way, but I didn't have a good picture of it. So I swiped that off the internet as long as this one. I was definitely not in a position to take this one. Diamond Head is, as you see, is a crater of an extinct volcano. You can drive to it. You can hike up there. There are hiking trails and so forth. You don't need to worry about it erupting while you're hiking in it. It's well dormant, but it is on the end of the Waikiki beach. There is a shuttle that goes down the main street through Waikiki area, and if you're lucky, you can get one. We found it just easier to walk most of the time. I stayed there twice, once with my friend Teresa, whom you met in the last video last week. She was my friend who was with the State Department and lived in Honolulu in Waikiki. In fact, in the same building that the senator to Hawaii lived. And she lived there for 10 years. And when I went with her in 2011, she was getting that condo renovated and ready to put on the market. So we were able to stay there which of course was very handy. It was about 2 blocks from the Hawaiian Hilton, the hotel which we'll see in a minute. The second time I went with my son James, and we were more at the north end or the northeast end near the zoo. But all of it's pretty walkable, a few blocks each way. These keep going too fast for me. Let me see if I can find a way to get back to that one. So the banyan trees also grow along everywhere, and we met those last week too. They put out roots as their branches are pretty low. They put out roots into the ground, and sometimes you'll see a whole block that'll really be just one tree. And coconut palms, of course, you have to be careful where you walk. There are lots of views along, of course, and at night it's really beautiful because all these trees will be lit. As I say, you can walk along the beach in the backs of the hotels. There'll be flamethrowers and hula dancers and musicians everywhere. It's really a fun place to be in the evening. And of course, you have the sunsets and the Hawaiian atmosphere.
You know, Mary, does Hawaii have the insects like how California doesn't? Is that true with Hawaii as well?
You asked me that last week about mosquitoes. I don't remember ever having any problem with bugs there, with mosquitoes. Everybody's outside, everything's open air. You know, if they had mosquito problem, I would think they'd have screens, but nobody has screens on windows.
Okay.
You might get a fan inside a building if you're in a outdoor hotel or dining room, but pretty much not air conditioned unless you're really, really inside a building. Very open air. So this is the Hawaiian Hilton that I was talking about, one of the major hotels. It has a whole village around it that's kind of Asian based with different shops and things you can do, restaurants, a number of other buildings that are alongside of it. There are some of them. And on Friday nights, the Hawaiian Hilton, as you see on this left, has fireworks. So if you've had your dinner and you're wandering out on the beach, of course, you want to stay away from the fireworks right as they're putting them off, but you can see them all up and down the beach. So when James and I were there and we were across the street from the zoo, we took a poke in there because, of course, it's always fun to see animals and see the beautiful flowers that are everywhere in Hawaii. We did not have a car either time either. Parking is at a premium. It is easy to get around. When I was there with Teresa the first time, we rode the local bus or walked, and James and I pretty much did that as well. We did take one tour, which was to Pearl Harbor, because it is out a little ways. You can get there on a local bus as well. But we took a tour that included some other things, and that was fun to do. You see how big he is. He's 6'3", so he's my big guy. So we all know our history that on December 7th in 41, Pearl Harbor was bombed by Japanese. Pearl Harbor looked like that. We had our entire West Coast fleet at that time. And 18 American vessels were destroyed in that, including 8 battleships. And most of those were salvageable, but the Arizona and the Utah are still at the bottom of that bay. I'm not sure if you can see this on the right. I have people.
iPad.
You can, okay.
Do you know where the iPad is?
It won't work because it hasn't been plugged in.
Oh, it won't work.
Yeah, we had really big casualties for Pearl Harbor, and it's what got us into the war. We were
Did you get in there?
Yeah.
kind of avoiding
Excuse me.
getting into Europe.
Let me get Jan to mute herself. I'm not having an option to do that. So Jan, please mute yourself.
I don't hear anything.
So we can hear everything you guys are saying as you're setting up.
Yeah, and I'm still seeing a couple of extra pictures on the right, even though I'm on speaker.
Very little.
Both pictures.
Let's see. Let me see if I can.
Is that?
Jack, do you have any suggestions?
Yes. Why don't you mute everybody, then unmute Mary.
You know what? Everybody's. Let's stop the screen share. And let's kind of see what's going on.
Wow.
Hold on.
Mine has the stand.
Where's it?
Jan Millette, can you try muting yourself?
Okay, I just muted her. And Lanny, you are not muted, but I don't have an option. So
She
you're
is
okay.
not, she's on a phone.
Oh, okay. All right.
Well, I think that whistling is gone anyway. Should we try?
Yes. Yeah, let's do the screen share again. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, we are not where we need to be, so let's see if we can find. All right. Okay,
Thank you.
everything's calm. Yeah, every time I'm on this, somebody has some problem I've never seen before. Okay, so the two ships that are at the bottom of the bay are the Arizona and the Utah, and this monument was built up right above where the Arizona is. It's right below this. And so you go out by boat, which is why you need some kind of tour and a ticket and so forth, to get out there and get on it. And inside it's pretty plain, white, but it has listed all the people, the sailors and Marines who were on board and who are now buried at sea, literally beneath this monument. Also docked in this bay is the Battleship Missouri. And if you've got a nice big 6'3" son, he would certainly be interested in that. And he was. So did go out on the Missouri. It is an active ship. It was last used in the Persian Gulf. So it just docked there. Historically, it was the ship where the Japanese surrendered to the US to end World War II. And this plaque right here on the right is embedded in the deck. And it has the date on it, the USS Missouri and so forth. A picture of MacArthur on the deck, where they moved a little table and chair out there for him to sign the papers of surrender. A picture out on the deck, a couple of pictures actually, and James having fun at the controls, wouldn't you? Our tour took us out to the military cemetery at the Punch Bowl, which is out near Diamond Head on the other end. There's this lovely statue there, again, for people who have died in military service. So getting into downtown Honolulu, we see lots of modern buildings, and there are some more since I've been there. This is where the cruise ships come in at Aloha Tower, Aloha Harbor, and the harbor is out this way. There will very often be hula dancers out there to give you leis if you are docking there from a cruise ship. There are little statues around. There's a big mall here at Aloha Tower, and it's fairly high. You can see it from everywhere. So all through the downtown area, there are certainly restaurants where you can eat with Hawaiian themes, patio dining often with flowers, water features, plants, the Hawaiian theme, of course, everywhere. And some of the water features in the downtown area that I'm just thought you might like to see.
They're beautiful.
They're really pretty. There's lots of sculpture and water features and plantings all through Hawaii. There's an active Chinatown, and this is just looking in one of the shops. And of course, a farmer's market kind of place. Some things were new to me that we don't have here, one being the rambutan down here, the red stuff. I had never seen that before I went out there in 2011. And it's a fruit similar to kiwi. You peel this red stuff off. It's almost like a rubber ball. And you peel that off and you can eat the fruit inside of it. But my friend Teresa frequented the markets, having lived there that long, and we'll see where she goes to the market on Saturdays as well. So of course, there are other things. This is their version of the bike rack, which I think is cute. I've seen that in other cities. And of course, it was a port where the sailors came. So you'll see little bars like this with the Hawaiian theme. And also the Pacific Institute has a campus in the downtown area. Historical district is kind of right next door to it. This building right here is often confused for the Iolani Palace. In fact, I saw it on a website and it is not. This one has the clock on the top. It's the Supreme Court building, the Iolani Hale. You see the word Hale, it means house. So you'll see that in various things in the name of something. And King Kamehameha has his statue out here in front. This is the third. And it is in the historical district, and the Iolani Palace looks almost like this, which we'll see. It does not have the clock on the top. The Iolani Palace was the palace of the kings, and you probably know that Hawaii was a kingdom before it became part of the United States, first as a territory, then as a state. So a little bit of a history. We thought that the Tahitians had come in this area mostly between 1219 and 1270. But they're finding now that there are other evidence of people being there earlier than that. They're saying about from 124, much, much earlier, but not sure that those settlements lasted. But the islands after 1270 were pretty isolated for about 500 years until Captain Cook and the British came along, and then the Americans started sending missionaries in 1820. So here is the king. Again, we see this historical sign, which we see all over Hawaii, who got all the various chiefs on the islands together and unified Hawaii in 1820. And a picture of him.
Was that building, the Supreme Court building, used in, was it Hawaii 5-0 as like the police station?
It could be, yeah. It could be. I'm not a TV watcher, so don't ask me anything about TV or what was on TV. That is way outside.
That was like 20 years ago.
I have watched Downton Abbey. That's it. I mean, I am not a TV watcher, so I don't know anything about any shows. So I'm totally in the dark there. But it could be. It could be. As I say, it looks almost like the Iolani Palace, which is this one. Notice no clock on top, but it's that same kind of architecture, that 1800s British architecture that was imported to look like that. So these kings lived in this palace. And while I did take some pictures in the palace, I couldn't put my hands on them. So I found you a couple others. It's fairly modest as a king's palace would go. The throne room and the dining room, a staircase. But, you know, it was a palace in its own right. From the outside, there's this nice little pavilion. It was, as I say, a pretty nice little thing built to British standards of the time. In fact, even more so. It had electric lights. It had indoor plumbing. I mean, what was not to like? No internet, but pretty modern for its time.
Yeah.
This is the back part of it, the back gate. If you were working in the palace, you might be working back here, and you see on the gate the coat of arms of the family, which would be this one. So the monarch was overthrown actually by the Americans who came and did that in 1893 and made it a territory. Queen Liliuokalani was the last ruler who ruled there, and she died in office. And in 1898, it became a U.S. territory.
Mary, before we get past the kings, somebody asked the question, did they have to be a native Hawaiian to be a king?
Yes, they were all native Hawaiians. Yeah. And just on that note, I've heard about 8 to 12% of the population now is completely all 100% native Hawaiian. So there's been a tremendous influx of people from, particularly when they started the sugarcane fields and pineapple fields, are bringing workers in first from China and from Japan, from Indonesia, from the Philippines. In Maui, there are a lot of Philippine people. As you say, British Americans, it is the most diverse state in all of our states. So, but yes, there are very few Hawaiians that are completely 100% Hawaiian anymore. And they do try to keep up the language. My granddaughter has Hawaiian lessons in her class in school. There's some of the banyan trees, particularly around the state capitol, which is an interesting capitol, no dome like our capitol in Texas or our US Capitol. It's very modern. And you'll see here kind of a walkway that goes through. And the reason for that is that down below, on the floor below, is the Senate on one side, the House of Representatives on the other side. So you can literally look at the window, look down into this. I took this picture looking through the window at a Senate session in session. And walking back out through the Capitol, you come to this statue, which is right here. He's got his back to us at this point, but this is Father Damien, whom you may have heard of, the Belgian priest who ministered to the lepers on Molokai. That's one island I've not visited. You can go there. Part of the island was set aside for lepers in the 1800s. Of course, they were highly contagious. And he did work there for a long time, ministering to the lepers. And the last 3 years of his life, he did contract the disease and died from leprosy in Molokai.
Mhm.
This is another historical church, and I'm not going to try to pronounce this one, but we did go in. It's a very English look to it. It's historical because mainly because the statehood ceremony was held in this church in 1959. So it's listed on both the state and national register of historical sites. So this is what it looks like inside. The British and the American flags flying both had a big impact on the history of the Hawaiian Islands. Looks like maybe there had been a wedding here just recently.
Okay.
I'm sorry, was there a question? In the back, at the back of the pew, there's a statue of Bernice Bishop, who was one of the native Hawaiians, descendant of one of the royal family, who married an Englishman, Charles Reed Bishop, not to her family's liking. Bishop was a missionary who came and brought language and Bible, and they started schools. But Bernice fell in love with the Englishman, and he was her choice. So they did marry, and they started, as I say, lots of schools, and also the Bishop Museum, which is the great historical museum in Honolulu. And if you go just to go to the beach, you're really missing out on the Hawaiian background by not going to the Bishop Museum, which I found really interesting. The Bishop Museum is part of the Smithsonian the Smithsonian Museums, which are many. There's not just one in Washington. There are quite a few around. So we took a trip out to the Bishop Museum. Again, you can get there on a local bus. Looking at this, you can almost see that it matches the museums in Washington, rather, the original Castle Museum. But there are several buildings on the property that stress different parts of Hawaiian culture. There's a big atrium in the middle with some of these big displays, a whale, and we see the house down below, the hale. Lots of artwork, Hawaiian artwork from different places and different cultures. The boats, the typical boats that they would have come from Polynesia. And some of these little models. Birds that you find in Hawaii, and different kinds of crafts. Shark. The ku, of course, we saw last week in the gardens. They're the god figures. These are interesting. These little capes were only worn by royalty. You were not allowed to wear them otherwise. They were made of canary feathers. These yellow are canary feathers and other bird feathers. Can you imagine how many canaries it would take to make a cape like this? It just kind of boggles the mind. Of course, you wouldn't have anybody but a royalty wear this kind of cape, and you will see it on statues of Kamehameha. Also
A
the,
big cape.
yeah. Also sashes, but yes, it was the bird feathers were very rare. And here are some of the houses that they would have lived in the early in 1800s, 1900s with the thatched roofs. And it's just it's a kili, meaning just a sleeping house, because it's all open air. You know, it's a moderate tropical climate. You can live outside most of the time, and you really just use your house for sleeping, or if you are in a big downpour. And this particular house, this grass house, was brought to the museum, and it's been rethatched since then, but this is what it would have looked like, what it does look like. You're out on the grounds, you see some bark cloth. They also were able to make not just plain cloth out of bark, but they imprinted it with various things, different stones or rocks or wood carvings with these different patterns and dyes. So they had interesting fabrics also. And while we were there, we visited one of the storytellers who was also playing his ukulele and telling stories about Hawaii while we were there. So things going on in the museum as well. One of the things that I wanted to do that I was alerted to before I went, and if you're going to Honolulu and are interested in the Doris Duke house and seeing it, you really need to get tickets like 6 months in advance, which sounds unreasonable. You can't just walk in and go to this one. You have to get it through the Honolulu Academy of Arts. So we went, we ordered those in advance, but we did go to pick up the tickets at the Honolulu Art Museum. And of course, it has arts not just from Hawaii, but all through Indonesia, Polynesian, all through the Southwest Pacific Islands, of which there are many, many. So the Doris Duke house was built in the 1930s. It's in a neighborhood out near Diamond Head, and she named it Shangri-La. Here you see the door, a very Islamic art. She was interested in Islamic art and started collecting it on her honeymoon. So she was supposed to build this house next to her mother-in-law in Palm Springs, but backed out when she got to Honolulu in her round the world trip collecting art because she fell in love with Hawaii and said, nope, I'm staying here and I'm going to build it here. So she met one of those brothers to the Duke. You remember him with the guy on the surfboard. So he knew some places to find good real estate, and he found her this lot that she purchased. So Doris Duke's father was a big tobacco billionaire. It said she inherited about $1.2 billion, and this was in the 30s. Known as the richest girl in the world. So this was her round the trip honeymoon, and a picture of her and one of the outbuildings. So she wanted to build this house with the Islamic art all through it. And she has entire ceilings and entire walls that were shipped to this location. And like many of these houses, we weren't able to take pictures inside, but I do have some off the internet. 14,000 square foot house. The living room is 1,000 square foot, which I find sort of interesting. But she had screens like this. We were able to take pictures outside. It's on 4.1 acres of land right on the ocean and right next to Diamond Head in a neighborhood. And since it's in a neighborhood, they can only take people in a van of about 15 people at a time. Why you need reservations way in advance. You can't just walk in. So it has beautiful gardens. There's only one guest room in it because they didn't want a lot of company bothering them. So finally, she was into building this guest house out from the house with its own pool and its own kitchen and own servants and so forth. So if you're a guest there, that's where you would stay. So these are some pictures from the interior of the house. Just every room is just a knockout. It's art everywhere. And it's hard to just take it in. There's just so much of it. But she did like to entertain. She entertained Jackie Onassis and people like that. One of the courtyards lit at night, of course.
How much of her time did she stay there?
She lived there. Yeah, she lived there. She entertained. She was a presence in Honolulu. It took about I think over 4 years to build. I think I have that somewhere. But yeah, she stayed there. She never went back to Palm Springs, and her husband finally got tired of that and left her. But she was a presence in society in Honolulu. So as I said, my friend Teresa did not have a car, so we took the local bus. She was a whiz at getting around the island without a car. Or she could either borrow a car or take public transportation. Now, of course, you have Lyft and the rest. But from downtown, you can take a bus. For us as seniors, it was $2. Now, this was in 2011. I'm not sure what it is now, but you could get a day pass, go all the way around the island, get off different stops, and get back on again. So that's what we did. We spent a whole day going around. We did not take the tour. You can take tours that would take you out to the Polynesian Cultural Center, but you can see the same thing at the luau shows at the hotels and the flamethrowers on the beach and all that. You really can see this, and the museum. You really, it's just, why bother to go here, right? You can see all. So anyway, we did take the local bus. We got off at Waimea Bay. We did not get off here. This is also a big surfing beach. If you're a big time surfer, there's some of the big hotels are out here, and some of the good waves come right off of this North Shore. We got off at another beach down here. If we had a car, I might have been interested in seeing this Buddhist temple, which is supposed to be beautiful, but we really didn't have the way to get there from there. But we did stop at a beach here and made the circle. So let me show you where we did get off at Waimea Valley. And that is, they dropped us off at the edge of the road and we walked in the palm driveway. These are monkey trees, very interesting pictures, full of peacocks all over. What's interesting about Waimea Valley Park, or I guess it's a park. Anyway, it's got some Hawaiian homes, the way the thatched hales that we saw, the way they would have lived, and also, of course, the gardens and waterfalls. And our chickens. So this would have been the kind of house that we saw in the museum with the thatch and places for them to build fires and so forth, the outdoor living. It says that this is an animal pen. Now, I can't imagine putting an animal in there that wouldn't just hop right out, but what do I know? So one of the waterfalls in this area, there are also docents along the way that can tell you things about this place. And oops, this was one of our ladies. She helped Teresa play this little children's game that with some little ball, and then she played the nose flute for us. So in case you're interested in nose flutes, Hawaii is the place to get one, I guess. No, we did not try that, but it did play. She did play it.
You don't want to share one of those.
Traveling with Teresa is living locally. She goes to the market on the bus, and she has a regular pass, and she just rides the bus all the time. So we went with our bags, took our bags with us, and went to the Honolulu Market. Now you can buy things already cooked, and we stocked up on the things that you can buy and have in the fridge for a quick meal, and also things to cook during the week. And of course, she knows what all the vegetables and flowers are. So that was kind of a fun experience. And there are people playing in their crafts and other things too, but it's mainly a farmer's market every Saturday morning, and all the locals go. So she had some event to go to. Some award was being given to a friend of hers, I think, from the State Department. So she borrowed a car to get us out to this resort on the Saturday night. And while she was at her event, I kind of took some pictures in this resort. So you can see it's an older building, but interesting that they had porpoises in one of their pools swimming around. So we're leaving Oahu and going to get us up to Kauai, which is called the Garden Island. I talked too long about Oahu. I'm going to have to really go. So we had a beautiful condo on right near Princeville at the bay here. We also visited Waimea Canyon and the Nepali coast. Did some swimming down at the beach, went to a garden nearby, ended up with an extra day that we had to stay in a hotel. So we had a condo for a week. And this was going into our condo property. It's right near the, right next to, in fact, the big Princeville Hotel, which is a 5-star hotel. So these are our condos right on the edge of the ocean. We had a downstairs condo. We are right at the beach, and right around here is the bay with the Princeville Hotel being over here. Right at the bottom of it is a beautiful beach. There was also a swimming pool on the property. And we had a huge, huge place. It had fans. It wasn't air conditioned, but it had fans and sliding doors because, as you see, our visiting nenes would have come in. We kept those doors shut. They're the banded nenes that we met last week. That little couple visited us just every morning looking for a handout. So this is kind of what it looked like back in the parking lot, where it was situated. We had a nice little car to run around in, and the side of the building, and our afternoon shower over the mountains, but not on us so much. Daughter and grandchildren in the pool, and us at dinner. My son came over from Maui, and he's got, this is not in her nose, by the way, it looks like it. My daughter from New Jersey and her husband and son. So we had a nice family event in Kauai for a week. At the beach. Someone asked about the shave ice. Well, you got to have shave ice if you're going to be in Hawaii. It's a Hawaiian thing, apparently, thing. So you go in and you get your shave ice, and of course you have the beautiful Hawaiian decorations everywhere, and everybody's eating their shave ice. This was another restaurant that we went to.
Are those shaved ice things like snow cones?
Oh, yeah, they're snow cones. That's what we would call a snow cone. Yeah. Waimea Canyon is called the Grand Canyon of Hawaii. It is volcanic and has all this red dirt that is the giveaway that it's volcanic and has that iron and magnesium and stuff in the soil. It's really a beautiful, beautiful place. You can come up to the top kind of it, about even with these top. You see the waterfalls to look out over the canyon. And the chickens everywhere. Our other favorite tour trip to take was along the Nepali coast, a dinner cruise, which is really the only way to see that because those mountains come back right down to the coast. You can camp up to a point along here, and then there are trails through. There's not a road per se, but there are some beaches that you can, if you're in a private boat, you could pull up and do some swimming. But you see that it's pretty steep. So even if you're hiking, it'd be a pretty steep climb in places, but lots of waterfalls, and people do go hiking along there. But the spectacular scenery, again, from the volcanoes on the west side of the island. And late in the day, of course, you get your late showers, not on us. What a beautiful day to be out on the water. I'm the garden lover, so we went to a garden that they had not been to before, or that Beth went to the garden before. The rest of them went swimming. The Na'ainakai garden was built by Americans who came over to build an orchard. They have a huge orchard, maybe 100 trees or so, maybe more than that, of different fruits that grow there, like 20, 30 of every kind of fruit you can imagine, just rows and rows of them. But they have, not even sure how many acres, 20, 30 acres, and they have started with sculpture and started planting other things, and they've been there quite a while now, 30 years maybe. So this garden is full of sculpture of all kinds and beautiful blooming flowers. I love the rainbow shower trees that were all over Kauai along the roads. Orchids, of course. And I'm not sure what all these are. We saw this one in Hilo as well. Some interesting palms, some kinds I had never seen before. So they have a wide variety of different kinds of trees and bushes, plants, several ponds, maybe 5 or 6 different ponds with sculpture in them. And the house itself, they do live in the house. It's right on the coast. They have the view of the ocean. and their own beach. And this is kind of a little path that runs back of their house. So just to see a little bit of the sculpture and the variety of things they have, a lot of it's very whimsical and appealing to children, because they do have school groups that come here. And you'll see why in a minute. There are a lot of children in their sculptures, and a lot of them involve reading. These aren't the only ones that show children reading with adults. I like that idea. Little children's area for the toddlers. And they've got these, I would call them like life-size dioramas, walk-in dioramas, where you can see different parts of the American, this is supposed to be the American West, and different, whoops, there it went. The Hawaiian houses, which of course we've seen several places. And there's sort of been Alaska or the Pacific Northwest. So children coming in get a chance to see what different parts of the United States look like. So our last stop in Kauai was down on the south coast, which was a swimming day. And some of the restaurants and shops and more food. I like this little restaurant with all the hats hanging up. And while we were at this table that you just saw, it got dark and we were ordering, and I turned around to take this picture out the window, and Beth said, "Oh, Mom, it's pitch dark out. You'll never get a good picture." And I said, "Watch me." It's my favorite pictures from Kauai, with the full moon over the south coast of Kauai. So our last day there, we went to the Princeville Hotel, walked around the corner to be informal guests for happy hour. This is from the entrance looking out. But it's a lovely, lovely place. I'm not sure what the price is, but it was nice to sit out on their balcony and watch the sun go down. And of course, sunsets are all over Hawaii. My favorite one is coming up, this one. And I especially like it because of the sun just catching it at the last dip below the horizon. So since we had to be out of the condo, we had to be out by 10 in the morning on a Sunday and checked into the Marriott in Oahu, which is where the airport is. And the only reason I put a hotel in here was because of the extensive landscaping they had that just blew me away. It's a huge hotel. There may be 8 towers. We had a park about a block away, but they were really great about it. We were only staying one night in one room, all 4 of us. And they let us check our luggage and have complete use of the facilities and all over the hotel grounds. And the same with leaving the next day. We had an evening flight. We had to check out. They stored the luggage, but we had use of the hotel the whole day. So they had their own pool, of course, this wonderful pool, even though they were right at the water's edge. And of course, we could get in the pool, but it was, I say, the landscaping just was, and just blew me away. In between all these buildings, all these landscape courts with fountains and birds and flowers. It's just sculptures, really, really amazing. And these in their lobby. I just really have never seen a hotel that went to this much trouble for landscaping. So this is our ending for Hawaii and for Kauai. And if you're thinking of going, I am not sure what the situation is as far as conditions are. I have heard this past week, though, that there is a tremendous shortage of rental cars in Hawaii, that people are think they have a reservation for a car and there are none when they get to the airport. And some people are renting U-Hauls for the week because there's nothing to drive. So just be aware that if you think you have a car, maybe you don't.
You need to really double check that.
Well, you get there, they say, "Oh yeah, you have a reservation for a car," and then you get there, "I'm sorry, we don't have any more cars." So I don't know how that happened, but it seems to be a problem this past week anyway.
Well, let's see. There's a number of chat things that I did not interrupt you with. Do you want to just go through the chat column or do you want me to read them?
Go ahead and read them. I'm looking at them as well.
Okay, well, I guess I should go start at the top.
Now, why are we talking about Diamond Head here, Aunt Sandra?
Yeah. I mentioned that we walked up Diamond Head, and if you want to do it, it's a really easy, slow, hard to do. Nice path. We walked up in the rain, but it was lovely when we got up there.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of people do hike up there. We just didn't have the opportunity to do it, I think.
It wasn't a hike. It was a flat, I'm going to say paved walk.
No, but it goes up and up and
Yeah,
up and up.
yeah.
That shows up that it's not muted. Two devices are open near each other, and I don't know what they were, but anyway, we fixed it, whatever it was, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
Were the Kings Native Hawaiians? Yes. The answer to that is yes.
So you did have one queen. You had a picture of her.
Uh-huh.
Was that typical to have queens?
I don't know, because they were not united until the very end and had the three Kamehamehas. She was a descendant of him. So that line, the male line died out. There was another king, I think maybe his brother, but she was of that family.
Okay.
So they didn't have a long history of a united Hawaiian. There were chieftains or kings on each of the islands. As far as I know, they were men, but I don't have that back history if there were any women involved. She's the only queen that I know of. So if anybody,
Okay.
guys,
Yeah,
please.
could you please show the picture again, please? That's Queen Liliuokalani.
Yes, let me get back on that. Okay.
Okay, while she's looking for it, I'm going to mention that what we learned up here, the First Nations in Canada, the bloodlines are through the women and not the men. So it's kind of the women that run the councils and are the determinants of things, which I found very interesting.
Okay.
In Hawaii.
No, in Canada.
In Canada.
So I don't know about the indigenous people. And
Well, this is not running through the women, apparently, because they did have kings, and all the chiefs that I have read about were male.
Yeah.
I think this was the end of the line, and she was all they had left who was.
Good.
So can
Mary,
you see?
Mary, you did an excellent job. Could you go to the picture just before this, and then we'll come back to it? I was an American history teacher for many years, as well as government economics. And if you could go to the picture just before this, or the slide just before this, and then we'll come back to it. I'll share with you a little bit of American but Hawaiian history. Oh, I think we jumped a little bit too far. It just said where.
What are we looking
Yes,
for?
right there. Notice it says in 1893, monarchy overthrown by America. Persuaded U.S. government to annex. This is part of what I need to honestly say is a black mark on American history.
Yes.
We overthrew the Hawaiian monarchy to their dismay. And we imprisoned, go to the next picture then. We imprisoned their queen in her palace for a year.
That's right.
And
She
one
was-
of the things,
Mhm.
one of the things that she did was she wrote a song called
did.
Aloha
Oi,
Oi.
Yeah.
Aloha Oi.
she did.
And it is kind of a love song from Liliuokalani to the Hawaiian people.
Yeah.
And it was more or less a song,
I
be
saw.
strong until we meet again.
Mhm.
And many of the true Hawaiians are real resentful of that period of history because it was really a group of businessmen that wanted to take over Hawaii and use it for their own financial exploitation. And the schools really don't teach that, and I didn't when I was a teacher, but I've learned the true history. And it is really a black mark on American history as far as
Yes.
the United States is concerned.
Yes, and interestingly enough, the missionaries were invited there when Hawaiian went to the United States and became a Christian, and persuaded the chiefs at his island, and I think this was in the Big Island, to welcome the American missionaries. And they did, because they felt that the message of Jesus was very much like their own message of kindness and help to others and family and oneness and all this sort of thing. So they agreed to that, and they certainly weren't anticipating being overthrown, after being welcoming these people. It's kind of like the Captain Cook story. They welcomed him, and then he kind of started ordering him around, and they said, "The heck with you."
Yes.
So, yeah, you can overstay your welcome when you're greeted like that, and you don't want to be taking advantage of these people. But yes, we did
Yes.
that. Absolutely.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, let's go. Thank you for bringing that up, David. Let's just see what else. Oh, was the Doris Duke also the Duke from Duke University? Was it named after her family?
That wouldn't surprise me. I don't know that story. I can't not share. Here we go.
Okay.
He was a tobacco billionaire and from that area probably, so that wouldn't surprise me.
Mhm.
I didn't look
And
into
Barb had put in there that apparently Doris Duke also had a home in Newport, Rhode Island.
and that wouldn't surprise me either. I'm not aware, only the one in Hawaii, because she was a collector of Islamic art, which, she put that all into that one house.
So I do have a question to Jack. You learned, were you being funny, or was that serious about the canaries?
No, that they nearly depopulated the islands of almost all birds,
Yeah.
making escapes. And they caught them in such efficient ways with nets and wax strings and things that pretty soon you couldn't find any birds.
Well, you can imagine how many canary feathers it would take to make those things. And yeah, you would just get rid of your canaries. I mean, that's not a smart thing to do.
Marjorie said on your rental car issue that on Oahu, they're going for $3,000 and $4,000 per week.
Oh,
So they have a trip planned for November, and she said that might change their plans.
my goodness, you can get around in Oahu. You can do the local thing. You can do the local bus, and you can walk, and you can take day tours. Now, getting up to where we were in Princeville, that's like 35 miles from the airport where we stayed. There is no public transportation in Kauai. So, but you could do it in Oahu. You could do it if you went to Honolulu.
Kathleen, don't we have a member that lives on Oahu?
We do. No, we have 2 in Honolulu and 1 on Kauai.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
It'd be
believe what we did,
Yeah.
what we did the last time we were in Honolulu is we contacted one of the members in Honolulu, and she said, unfortunately, I don't have room the time you're going to be here, but what I'd like to do is host you for a day and show you my Hawaii. And she was awesome.
Yeah.
She picked us up where we were staying, and she drove us around to her favorite beaches, and she just did a day's come with me and I'll show you my Hawaii. So I want to say that we have a really fine member that's in Honolulu. Her name is not on the tip of my tongue, but she was awesome. One other thing that I'd like to real quickly mention, and that is if you're going to Hawaii, you can go to the commercial luau's, and they're nice and very festive and so on. But what is neat is if you can search to see if there's going to be a local church luau, because sometimes the churches will have luau's as fundraisers. And my wife and I have done that at least 3 different times. When we were in Hawaii, we found that a church was having a luau. And it's a real local situation, which is what the luau's originally were, where they would roast the pig in the ground, and they would have poi, and they would have Hawaiian entertainment music and so on. And so if you want to really get the local flavor, as a matter of fact, one church said, we're having it on Saturday, but if you want to come Thursday and Friday, you can help us start preparing the food. And I really
That's
considered
great.
it, but it was on the opposite
Everything you can
side
do
of
local.
Oahu, and it would have taken a long bus ride, because Mary's exactly right. It's best not to have a car, and so it would have been a kind of a long bus ride, since it was on the opposite side of the island. But we did attend the luau.
Yeah, I
Great.
had the opportunity to do a couple of local things. As I was telling you, with Uncle Norman's Friday night potluck in Hilo, and then staying with my friend whose condo was right in Waikiki, a block from the Hawaiian Hilton. So and she did not have a car for 10 years. She didn't have a car. So it's possible to do that. But if you know people there or have a local to show you around, that's always best. I mean, with any of our evergreeners, but especially in Hawaii, I think. If I were going back, there are a couple of things I would like to see, that Buddhist temple and to go up to the Diamond Head, but I've only been to Oahu twice, so you can't see it all every time.
So Mary, Janice asked, so you were there several times. What time of year, were these trips? Were they the same?
No, they weren't. First trip I took was in February. I remember that quite well because Teresa turned 62 and got her national park pass on her giveaway. So I remember that very clearly in 2011. So it was February. But it's just pretty much the same temperature all year round. So there's not that, spring and fall and winter, summer thing that we have. The Kauai, we went, I was there 4th of July. I had a problem getting a last minute ticket to Hawaii. I got a last minute invitation from my daughter saying, well, it turns out this condo is really big. Why don't you come? And, well, let me see. It turned out I had air miles and I could only get to Honolulu. It was 4th of July weekend. And so there were people coming out of there. I could not get in there on Saturday. They arrived on Saturday. I could not get in any way on that Saturday. I could get in on Sunday as far as Honolulu. So I had to fly Hawaiian Air from there and had to pay for that. But, I had a free place to stay, a free car, and a free airplane ride. What was not to like about that?
Mary, we were there a really long time ago, and what I remember about Hawaiian Air, and I don't know if it's any different, but it was quite interesting that because they hop from island to island to island, it's almost like a local bus.
It is.
You didn't even sort of have to buy a ticket. You just sort of lined up and then on the next flight. Is it anything like that now?
It's like every hour on the hour. That flight that I got into Honolulu, I had an hour to get to Hawaiian Air, which is another building. And my luggage took 45 minutes to retrieve. And then I ran all the way to the Hawaiian Air and got up to the desk, and the woman came around the corner and she took me by the arm and she said, let's go, your plane is leaving right now, which of course I knew it was. And she said, your suitcase is not going with you. And so I got on as the doors were closing and got that flight. But the next hour, the next plane was the next hour. So they were running like every hour. Hawaiian Air was running every hour. But those planes are full. It's amazing that they can fill up a plane of 300, 400, 500 people from cities like Dallas or wherever you're coming from and fly to Hilo, fly to Kona, fly to Honolulu, fly to Liui, all these different places with full loads of people. I mean, there are lots and lots of people going to and from Hawaii. And yes, they have the little island hoppers, and Maui has a small airport on the west side near Lahaina. So if you're flying, as my son did, they just live right down the road from that little airport. It's just a landing strip. I don't know if they even have a building, but you get on, as you say, just say, I think they call it in advance. Can we get a flight over to Kauai? I find I'm going to be able to get time off for a couple of days. My daughter want to go over. So they came at the last minute. I knew before Beth knew that they were going to have 2 more people, and they were able to come for 3 days. So they weren't there the whole time, but it was a big place. I mean, I probably would have slept 10.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a huge place.
Let's see. Janice said that she had been to Molokai. Do you have
Yeah,
anything to say about that?
yeah, I'd like to hear about that too. Janice, where are you? Did you leave?
Here I am. No. I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay. I had been to Hawaii twice, and so we decided that we would try to do something different the second time. And my husband really wanted to go to Molokai. He said he remembered his mother praying and all that for Damien and the missionaries. And so we did fly over there. It's a very different feeling completely. It's rather sad, actually. They said that when the people that had the disease, where they were bringing them over there, and the ship couldn't get all the way up to shore, so they had them jump off and swim in.
Oh my God.
And many of the people drowned and didn't even get to the island. We saw the church that was there that they had, and how we got around that island was an old school bus.
Mm.
And the gentleman that was the driver of the bus had the disease, but he had survived. And so little shops and that type of thing, but nothing grand and glorious like you think, oh, what the Hawaiian Islands are. It's totally different.
Yeah. Well, I
We
know
had,
major
we had
des-
we had an experience, we got to go to Lanai. It's a very small island. When we were there was only one hotel, and that was the place where Bill Gates got married. And I think he got married on one of the golf greens. And what he did was I think, bought like every flight or boat or anything that could get near him for that period of time he was there, so nobody could fly over or bother him or take pictures or do anything.
Mhm.
And then we had another very strange experience there. We were travel writing about the trip, and we had been there for a week, and we had seen, maybe the 3 or 4 most beautiful beaches in the world, but we'd never stepped foot on a beach. We were only writing about it. So we kind of put our foot down when we got to Lanai and said, no, we're not going to go skeet shooting or wherever they wanted to take us. We really want to sit on a beach. So at, I don't know, 4 or 5 o'clock one day, they said, okay, you're on your own. You have to, the rest of the time is yours. But we didn't know about sunsets in Hawaii. So we walked down to the beach, and it was really empty and beautiful, and it was all our own. And then at 6 o'clock, it went black.
Mm.
Sunset, and there was darkness, and we could barely find our way back to the hotel. We got like a half an hour on the beach.
Oh. Oh. Yeah, you asked about when I was there. I don't remember when I went in 2014 and 15. I just remember it being about the same temperature every time I went. And it doesn't seem to matter. It's all like between about 75 and 90 all the time. It was hot in Kauai. Really hot.
Okay. Does anybody else have a question?
I have just a quick suggestion. When you were asking what best time to go, kind of look at some of the things that they're offering there. Kauai, the Big Island has a phenomenal Hawaiian dance demonstration contest in April. It's a big hula festival. In July, they have another one on the mainland. They also in July, I believe, have a ukulele festival. So you might want to look to see what things are going on the months of the year, and then make your decision kind of accordingly, because I've attended many of those types of things. They have a slack key festival. So you might want to just select the event that you'd like to attend and see if you can get tickets for that, and then go at that time of the year.
That's interesting. Makes me wonder what Ron Grant's roadamerica.com might say about in the Hawaiian Islands, the least visited or most unusual things.
Well, I went to church And also went to a play with Teresa, and I don't even remember what play it was, but there are things going on all the time, as you say, you know, the local stuff. Honolulu is a big city. There are lots of stuff. The Honolulu Symphony, I think, was crashing or cratering when about the time we were there, that they didn't have enough money to stay in business. So I can't vouch for the Honolulu Symphony anymore. They built a big new symphony hall for it, and then they didn't support it. So I don't know if it's still going or not, but they do have other things.
Interesting. Well, anything else? If not,
Yeah, I heard a beautiful Hawaiian acapella chorus this past week on Facebook. I wish I had pulled it up and so I could let you hear it, but you might try YouTube. It was YouTube. Somebody had posted it from YouTube, and I don't know what choir it was, but it was all in Hawaiian. It was just a group of people standing around, but it was just beautiful, beautiful singing. Look for Hawaiian acapella singing or something like that. You might be able to find it on YouTube. It was really gorgeous. I've listened to it a couple times.
oh, thank you. Good idea.
Just as the last couple of days.
Well, Mary, thank you again. This was really fascinating and lovely pictures. Oh my gosh. So this will get posted, and I do think what the Rachel who posts them and does some, we'll have her edit out our technology problem.
Yeah.
But I think on these two-parters, she's been combining, it's like she'll put maybe 5 pictures and then she'll put the 2 different YouTube links, like part 1 and
I
part
gotta see about
2.
the.
Yeah, I got an email about separating those out. I wasn't thinking that when I sent you the first pictures,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I figured out what they were from the second email.
Well, you know, I love looking at all those pictures. All right, I'm going to change my view back to gallery view. There we go. Well, Mary, thank you again. I mean, you were so wonderful to share these with us.
Oh, it's
For
my
sure.
I wish I'd be back. You know, I'm dying to go again.
Yeah, really. And you've got family there, so
Yeah.
you know.